Welcome to the Fabulous Fifties and Beyond. I'm Jim Pollard, your co-host with my wife, Jeanetta. Today we're going to be talking about murder in Metropolis. You stay tuned.
And he'd say, go with what you got. Start from where you are. Give it your best shot. Keep reaching for that star. Get in the race. Keep your own pace. Keep moving and never stop. Just go. Go with what you got.
Our guest today is Lonnie Cruse, author who has written a couple of books now, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them is Murder in Metropolis. I hope the tea's got you to where you stayed now. So it is a novel written by what we call a local author because we consider Metropolis local. Jeanetta was able to talk to her and get her to come and be on our show and talk about it because she has another book called Murder Beyond Metropolis, and then some exciting news about some other things that are happening. So Lonnie, welcome.
Thank you.
Talk to us about Murder in Metropolis. How did you come up with that? I read some of the things about it, but tell us all about the book.
Well, I had wanted to write for a long time, but I thought since I hadn't been to journalism school that the journalism police would arrest me if I tried. And then I read a couple of books by well-known authors that had a couple of large plot holes that you could have driven a truck through. And I said, oh, I can do that bad. So I started writing it in October of 1999, not knowing a thing about writing a novel, but I figured I could learn, and I did. It took me about a year, and I got it written, and I held the first printed copy from my publisher in my hand a month before my 60th birthday.
A month before your 60th birthday. See, our show is aimed at people 50 and older. That's where we come up with the name The Fabulous Fifties. And I'm glad you said that because we try to let people know, we try to impress upon people the importance of using the talent and abilities that you have, regardless of what your age is. And I think that there is a lot of talent, a lot of knowledge, a lot of abilities that's going to waste because people are sitting home doing nothing and not using their talents.
Well, we had moved to Metropolis about 9 years ago, and I kept looking at that statue, you know, Mom, Home, Apple Pie, and I kept thinking, that'd be a really neat place to dump a dead body. And nobody else seemed to think of the idea. No one else seemed interested, so I thought I'd try it, and so that started the first book. But I started when I was on the past the polite side of 55, so I think people should try their wings.
Tell us a little bit about the book, because I know it talks about the city, and then, as you say, somebody dumped the body at the statue, right?
It's really not about Superman. It's more about the statue and the town and the people. I wanted to get the flavor of a small town, and I really enjoy living in Metropolis. In this book, my main character is Sheriff Joe Dalton, and he goes outside early one morning to scrape a drunk up off someone's sidewalk and finds his best friend's body dumped at the statue. So he has to figure out not only who killed him, but why dump him there in a public place when the river's a handy 3 blocks south. So he solves the case, and you meet his family and his deputies along the way. And then in the second book, he goes to Brookport for a reunion breakfast with his niece and her family, and goes outside to look at her new hen house and rounds a corner and falls over a dead body. So as you can see, this is high literary fiction.
Wow.
But of course they do happen, you know.
Yes.
Yes. Unfortunately.
They're kind of light. I like mystery, but I like them to be light and funny, so I try to write the same thing.
I heard one of the comedians say one time that he was thinking about stopping being a comedian because it got to the point to where life was funnier than fiction, you know.
And it
reality.
is.
Yes,
it is. When you
reality.
read the newspaper, you can't write it that strange.
And you think, how could anybody be that dumb?
Yeah, yeah. And I cut things out of the newspaper to save because they're so classic.
And I guess they're thoughts or things for a book, right?
Yeah, and because you can change. You don't want to write the same thing with the same names, but you can. Well, like in this book, I saw a case that happened in a nursing home where some residents were killed, and they investigated it, and it turned out to be an accident. But I thought, oh, that would make a great murder. So that became like the linchpin in this book.
Right.
It's always amazing to see the things that Jay Leno has on his show, the misprints in the papers.
Yes.
And on the internet, if you do any internet marketing, the biggies they tell you to always have your swipe file. I always thought that's a cute term. They say when you see something you like that you think will work, you swipe it and stick it in your file, and you may want to use it later. So
I call that my research file.
Your
It's
research
the same thing. Yes. Yeah. I get things off the internet, out of the newspaper, and just from watching people.
yeah.
People, yes, people are amazing, aren't they? Just watching people. And you know what Art Linkletter says, don't you? He says that he loves to interview people who are kids and then people who are over 65 because the kids don't know any better than say anything they think, and older people don't care.
Yeah. It reached that point. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting close.
Well, we are, and so we claim that privilege every now and then.
Well, I hit 62 last October, and I was thrilled because instead of me sending money to Uncle Sam, he's sending it to me, and I like that arrangement much better.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, we did
yes.
that too, and so I know we know what you're talking about. But in your research, because I was talking about doing a book, we're both authors also.
And we did start in our 60s also.
Yeah, yeah, we started in our 60s, and I'd been doing Santa professionally for years and getting all these stories, and so I came up with the idea things kids say to Santa, and I'd come in at night and she'd debrief me. What funny thing happened today, and write it down, and finally she got on me about either do it or quit talking about it.
That's kind of what I did. You know?
Really? That's
Just
the
sit down and do it.
So, but we put her book out first, and hers is 40 Inspirational Stories, and hers is Mrs. Claus Shares Stories from the Heart. But the funny, I always get these funny stories, and if we didn't write them down, I'd forget them though.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have the research file.
And a notebook handy at all times. And I was planning on getting very rich. I was going to invent a notebook that could be used in the shower because that's where the best ideas hit, and a pen. And somebody beat me to the punch. I saw that on the internet lately, that there's now a notebook and a pen that you can use in the shower.
Really?
So,
Well, you know they've got them for diving. So
I guess that's where she got. It was a lady who did it. I guess that's where she got the idea.
Well, now, I have to tell you, I went to the library a couple of weeks ago for luncheon. You know, there was an author and her husband. They had walked,
across Kentucky, wasn't it?
yeah, 300 and something miles across Kentucky. And she said that she wrote while she was walking. And he would tell her, you know, there's a rock ahead. So don't,
I was going to say, I don't know that I could do both at once.
I don't think I could either, but
In other
she
words,
did.
you're not the chewing gum, riding the bicycle type.
Yeah, I'm not real good at
But
that.
there's so many things that if you think they come through your head, and then if you don't write them down, they're gone.
Yeah, you have to keep an idea notebook, and I use index cards too. And I cut them in half because a whole index card intimidates the daylights out of me. All that 3x5 space. So I cut them in half and write notes on there, and then that becomes my storyboard. And I put them on I tack them to a board, and then they become chapters, and that's a big help. Helps you get from point A, where I can usually see scene one, and I can usually see the ending, but I can't see that pesky middle. So I write notes on those cards and lay them out, and I try not to think in terms of chapters, just what are some interesting things that can happen.
Right.
And I write them down, and then kind of put them in order. And it's amazing when you just let your mind flow, what kind of things will come out. And then you start from there and take off. And it helps you get through the middle.
It's interesting, you know, the things that you're talking about are things that our viewers need to hear if they're even thinking about writing a book, or we may give them the encouragement that they need to write a book. Because my thinking is everybody's got at least one book in them.
But now, if they don't want to necessarily publish a book, they at least need to keep a journal and something to pass on to their children and their grandchildren.
I did that. I got one of those, just a big log book.
Right.
It was about like that, just had lines in it. And just started, when my father-in-law passed away in the 70s, I started writing down his stories for my children, and then I wrote my parents' stories because they were interesting. And then I put out a short story book with some of them, like my dad was when he ran away from home at a young age because he was in an orphan home, and hopped a freight train going to Africa, as he pronounced it, not knowing that freight trains don't go to Africa. Plus he went west, which was the wrong direction. And so I wrote those stories down for my children. And I think that's an excellent thing to do. We don't pass things down to our kids like we should.
You know, and that's so true. I remember my grandfather telling me that during the Depression, he rode the rails.
My dad did too.
You know, he literally rode the
And
rails.
it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. You could
Trying
get,
to find work.
Yeah, or just riding the rails. I mean, you could get beaten up and thrown
Yeah.
off the train real
Yeah.
fast.
And in the years that I knew him, you would have never thought it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was an executive at a mill and all this, and he'd say, "You rode the rails," you know, type of situation. But like you say, our kids need to know about things like this.
Yeah, because it's a whole different day for our children now.
It's a different world, absolutely different world. And I think it's fascinating to them, a lot of them, to know, you know, how we really did live.
Well, what I tell people, I teach workshops a lot on writing because I want to give a hand up to other people since I got a lot of hands up. And I tell them everyone has a story, whether it's fiction or real.
Right.
Right.
Sit down and write it. It may be, my first draft is not even readable, but I got help. Somebody read it for me and told me where I was making errors. I polished it up and started sending it out. I started entering contests. I finaled in several, so I knew that I was on the right track. So things like that is what you need to do.
Right. Well, Lonnie, we're going to take a break and let Jeanetta and Pam talk to us about nutrition. I usually leave the room during this part because I'm not the best eater in the world, which you can look at me and tell
Oh, you're
that.
a good eater.
Oh, I'm a good eater. Yeah, that's right.
It's what you eat.
Okay, time for Pam and Jeanetta. You stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Welcome back, Pam Ward. Today, Pam is a registered dietitian at Western Baptist Hospital, and we're going to be talking about something that concerns our health. I'm not sure, but
well, of course, something that concerns our health.
that's right.
Today, I want to talk about mercury consumption with fish. You know, I don't know if you've seen the headlines, but not too long ago, a model suffered from mercury poisoning because she ate so much fish, and she thought she was being so healthy by staying away from the red meat. We tell that the omega-3 fatty acids in the fish are so healthy.
Right.
So she really thought she was doing the right thing, but she was eating such vast quantities that she made herself very, very sick.
Really?
Yeah.
I have heard lately there's been a warning to pregnancy women.
To pregnant women, nursing mothers, small children, that's the ones they have officially warned. But I also think people that have immune dysfunctions, you know, whether it's because of medication, cancer treatment, whatever it may be, or if you have some GI issues, I just would be very careful because it is something that can be very serious, you know, if it does happen.
But it's, you know, like tuna fish. You're supposed to be able to eat tuna fish, right? It's supposed to be healthy.
It's supposed to be healthy, and actually that's a perfect example. What they call light tuna, the canned light tuna, it is one of the lowest in mercury. But the, what is it, the albacore that we eat?
Is that
the white tuna?
Which,
That one actually is not low. And you really shouldn't eat more than 6 ounces at a time, and you shouldn't eat it more than twice a week. You know, and a lot of people will take a can of tuna fish for lunch,
right.
You know, and they may do that 3 or 4 days a week, and they are probably ingesting too much mercury. So the light, quote, light tuna is a better choice than the white tuna.
of course, I like the white better, but
Well, the white, yeah, the white's got a better
Right,
taste to
right.
it. But it, unfortunately, it is, you know, it does tend to be higher in mercury.
what about like our catfish and things that we have around here?
Actually, that's a great question. Catfish in general is one of the lowest. However, if it's a locally caught catfish, because you know we like to fish around here,
Right.
unless you have some specific information on that type of fish in this area, you should eat no more than 6 ounces at one time, and that should be all the fish you should eat that week. Because it's one of those, err on the side of caution, you know, better safe than sorry. But if you catch your own fish, you know, then use a light hand with them, and don't eat them very frequently.
So now, like if you have your own pond and have your own fish in it, they would still have mercury in them?
Well,
I mean, you know.
Not to most of the problem is from basically things we dumped, you know, in the waters.
Right.
And we've polluted the waters to the point that now we're polluting the fish. So, you know, again, like I said, if you know where it came from, you know all the details about it, then you're probably fine. But if you just go up to the
a
lake or,
restaurant.
go somewhere and fish once a week, 6 ounces, and no more fish that week, just to be on the safe side.
Okay. Well, I really don't eat enough fish. I'm
Yeah.
not, and I think most people are that way.
Unfortunately, you're right, and I'm the same way because I'm not a big fish fan. And two, around here when we get into the fish, yay, I eat mine, it tends to be deep fried. We like it breaded and
Yes,
deep fried.
absolutely.
And
With hush puppies?
with hush puppies and French fries
Right.
and all those good things. But that deep fat frying negates some of the health benefits.
Right.
We're talking primarily about baked, grilled, broiled fish, no fats added. As far as the healthy aspect of it goes, because those nice omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to be very heart protective.
Right. What about salmon?
Salmon, it is going to be relatively low, and it's one of these, if you're eating from these that are relatively low, you can go twice a week, 6 ounces at a time, no more than that, and be safe. So salmon is fine. One of the biggest ones that you really don't want to eat that people might eat in this area is swordfish. I do see that sometimes on the menus or at the fish markets. And swordfish is typically very high in mercury. The others are king mackerel, which we don't see too much around here, and tilefish.
We used to eat a lot of king mackerel in Florida.
Yeah, in Florida you probably would. On the
Yes.
coast you probably would. But
It was so good. Maybe it wasn't poison back years ago.
And it probably wasn't. A lot of this we have just done in the last few years. We're not always as good to ourselves as we think we are. We don't think about the long-term ramifications with things. And this is one of them. We have now polluted the fish population. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination
Don't
not
eat
to
it,
eat
right.
fish, because fish is extremely healthy. I can't stress that enough. It's a great, great option. But you have to watch the quantities, and you have to watch what type you eat. So it is something to be aware of. It is something to think about. But again, I'm not saying not to eat fish.
Right.
And these guidelines, as we said earlier, they're for pregnant women, nursing women, small children. As I said, people that have compromised immune functions, I might want to be careful. But for the average person, we've got a little more leeway. But if you really want to be careful with it, these same guidelines are still good choices.
And as you said, it is very good for you because of the omega-3?
Omega-3 fatty acids.
Right.
They've been shown to be very protective for the heart. And again, though, you can't fry it. It has to be baked, broiled, grilled, something that doesn't add a lot of saturated fat to it because, again, it sort of defeats your purpose.
Smoking fish is good.
Smoking fish is good.
I think that gives it a good flavor.
Yeah, smoking fish
that's
is
something
good.
to it.
When we were in Alaska, I ate quite a bit of that. It was very good. But it's the deep fat frying that we need to stay away from.
Okay. Well, that's Southern.
Yes, that is
That is
definitely
very
Southern.
Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I think we're about out of time, so we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
I'll be here.
Our guest today is Lonnie Cruse, author and exciting author. We talk about some of her books, and she's something exciting fixing to happen also. Talk to us about the new adventure you got going, or the new series.
I always admired authors who could write more than one series, so I started a second series, and I sold it recently to 5 Star Mystery Line, which is a very good publishing house. And it's the title of that one is 57 Heaven, and it features a couple who are baby boomers, so slightly younger than me, and the husband and wife, and he has a 57 Chevy in show quality, and they take it here to Paducah to Noble Park to a contest, and you open the hood and you open the trunk and you slide the mirror under so the judge can see it. And when he opens the trunk, her very irritating cousin's body's been stuffed in there. So they know it has to be someone they know who killed her, because who could get into the trunk of the car, not to mention in his locked barn to get to it. So they have to try to figure out who killed her. So I'm starting a new series with this couple in their late 50s, early 60s, and it's a lot of fun to write. I'm writing the second one. The first one will be out sometime next year.
So you've got the first one finished then?
It's finished, and I've turned it in, and they're editing it now.
Well, now, do you have another book in this series also?
Yes, it's supposed to be out as soon as I can get it out. I'm waiting on the cover artist to finish the cover, and then it'll be coming out hopefully in July.
But you have the writing done.
Yeah, it's called Married in Metropolis, and someone in book 1 marries someone introduced in book 2, and same characters. And I've got book 4 finished, but I won't bring it out till next year.
In other words, you got to start at 1 and read all the way through to keep up with what's going on.
You can skip around
Right.
because it's not necessarily chronological, but you can also read it as a series because it's always the same characters and they grow a little in each one, add a family member here and there.
It's always interesting because we've interviewed a lot of authors here, and I said we're both authors ourselves. And then I've met some of the larger authors, and I don't mean that derogatory, but I mean Mark Victor Hansen, talked with him, and I guess he's one of the biggest ones going right now with over 45 million books.
The
being sold.
chicken soup books.
The chicken soup books, he and Jack Canfield. And they're great people. And I've heard Mark say more than one time that, and it's true, we found that out, I'm sure you have too, that writing the book, getting the book published is about 85 to 88% of it, and the rest of it is PR.
Promotion. Right?
Promotion.
Yes.
There are a lot of good books that never make it because the promotion, and he also says that don't count on the publisher to do your promoting.
With a small press like I do, you have to do 99% of the promotion yourself, and it's hard. You have to pay your way and go places and meet people, but it works.
But even if a big company publishes your book, they're not going to put much money behind it.
No, you have to do it.
That's right, unless you're a well-known author.
He said, and he's probably as well known as him, he said they'll throw $25,000 at it and that's it. You know, the rest of it.
And if you don't sell, they'll drop you.
Oh,
so
right.
Where a small publisher will at least give you a chance to earn a fan base.
Yeah, well, they actually sold, his story is that they sold 40,000 copies of their book before it was ever published. They talked about their chicken soup book and what they were going to do. And that people would say, well, I'd like to have a copy of that. And he'd take out a 3x5 card and put their name and address and telephone number on it. So they had 40,000 of those cards. He says, and then we still had to pay for having it published. But they don't pay now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is fun to write a book. I think everybody's got a book in them. But they need to understand that it's going to be work. I mean, there's going to be things to promote the book. We've been to book signings like you have, and a book signing is not the most exciting thing in the world either.
Plus, it takes away time from your writing.
That's right.
You know, with this one, I had all the time in the world, but with this one, I had, and when with subsequent books, and now if I'm doing 2 series, my writing time is much shorter because I have to get out there and sell the books. Plus, you're selling yourself, and that's something I tell new authors. Present yourself carefully.
Right.
Because if you come across as a snot,
Yeah.
that's somebody's money that they're investing in your book, and they're going to put you down and go buy somebody that's nice.
That's right. That's right.
It doesn't matter how well you write. If you're not nice to people, they're not going to buy you.
Well, I've always said that the man doesn't get to be president, chairman, board of a company by being nasty. You know, unless his daddy owned it. But and that's so important in life is, you know, treat people like you'd like to be treated.
And most authors, even like as you said, the big names are so nice.
Oh yes.
To smaller fish in the pond like me, they're always so nice and helpful.
Have you ever been to BEA?
No, I've heard it's really great.
Oh, it is. We went to LA 4 years ago. We went out there.
I don't know.
And it was fantastic. I mean, the big authors were just as nice as they could be. And of course, we were in the small press section. But it was a real experience to get to meet these people and talk with them and spend some time with them. As a result of that, I was able to get on Fox and Friends and Montel Williams show as a result of being there and going in one of their conferences. So it's important to learn these things and take advantage of networking.
Yes, networking is key.
So important when we do that. And we've been able to have a lot of other things to happen as a result of networking. But again, you know, I was supposed to retire about 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and I didn't.
Here, a few years ago.
And so we've been just as busy in the last few years. anything else you'd like to share to us about your books? Because we haven't talked about them a whole lot, and I know that one of the reasons you don't is because you give the storyline away and you give the plot away. You know?
I would like to say that they're a good, fun, clean read. I'm not into real dark or real graphic. The most graphic I get with sex is he slides the remote across the table when she says, "Let's go upstairs." I think people have better imaginations than I can write. I'd also like to say I have a website. You just Google my name and that pops up, and it's got a lot of pictures of Metropolis and some fun things.
Okay.
And I have a blog, and I chat about writing on there, and I interview authors.
Is this where they get your book? Are there some local places where they can get your book?
Hummus in Metropolis and the Chamber both carry my book, signed copies of my book. It's in the library here. It's in the library over there. And right now, in order to get copies, you would have to either order from me or go to Hummus or to the other store, because I'm not in bookstores at the moment, but I will be in the next few weeks.
Right.
Now, wasn't it you that the paper just did an article on about your blog?
About blogging, I almost fell out of my chair. The lady called and interviewed me over the phone from the Paducah Sun, and we talked quite a while, and she sent a photographer out to take my picture, and so I'm thinking postage stamp on page 29. Right. And she put me like, 5 by 8 on the front page, and I almost dropped my teeth, and my daughter-in-law called and said, "Tell Lonnie she's on the front page of the Paducah Sun this morning, and I'm thankful she's not there because she's been arrested." And I said, "Well, I'm thankful too."
Right.
My daughter-in-laws are big supporters, but it was hilarious when she said that.
Yeah. Well, and that's good.
That is good. That's good info.
Paducah newspapers are good about taking local artists and things.
Yeah, they've been good to us.
Yeah.
Been very good to us.
Yeah, they, one of the ladies interviewed me, I think when this book came out, and then I've also been interviewed by the Metropolis Planet. So the local papers have been real good to me.
Yeah.
And Hummus always says, if you appear in the paper, bring us some books, because we sell every time your name is in the paper.
Yeah,
right.
It's usually a good way for them to go.
It is.
Well, Lonnie, we really appreciate you being with us. And
thank you for having me.
Do you list your workshops on your website too?
No, I don't, but I do teach writers' workshops, and I can be contacted through my website. So if anyone needs a writer's workshop, have workshop will travel.
Okay, well that's good, because I think they need to know that. And we're kind of like you. I've never had a journalism course in my life or a creative writing course in my life. Now she went back to school this last year for the first time, had a creative writing class. She said it was a real experience with these new college kids.
I've taken some on the internet, and I've also taken like death investigation, which is interesting when you're writing mystery.
Right.
And those are real good for you. But yeah, I teach a basic writing class, so I can be contacted on my website.
Well, we appreciate you being with us. We appreciate you being with us today also, and we want to encourage you to come back next week. We'll have another program that we hope that will inform you and inspire you and motivate you. And in case you want to get in touch with us, remember it's the Fabulous 50s, 50s spelled out, .net. Jeanetta, tell them how to get in touch with us otherwise.
P.O. Box 7, Bowes, Kentucky, 42027.
Remember, use it or lose it.
Can't see as well as I used to. Can't run as far or as fast.